moving along quickly because time is moving on as well. It's the National Electrical Wholesalers Kildare Intermediate Football Championship. JR Group A permutations look fairly straightforward. Milltown versus Ellistown on Sunday at 12 noon in Mangard Park. Doing that one myself. And Rathangan versus Straffan. That should be a good one too. That's on Sunday in Clane at 12 noon. So high noon all around there for the Group A in the Intermediate Championship, Jar.
Oh, it's kind of similar, I think, in setup in Group A in the senior as well. That Milltown, Ellistown one is a real kind of interesting backstory. I spoke to Milltown manager Johnny Donnelly. I'll have a story up on the Kildare Nationalist website, hopefully on Thursday afternoon, just about that, because not only is Johnny managing the Milltown team against his own club, Ellistown also contained his son and three of his nephews as well. So real family affair for Milltown manager Johnny Donnelly, and he actually had something similar last year when he was managing Robertstown and Ellistown were in the junior championship as well. So he has previous for going up against his son and some of his nephews as well. So yeah, that's just an interesting backstory, and yeah, it should be a good game, that Milltown Ellistown one. Milltown obviously have been very impressive and kind of marked themselves out as real championship contenders, as you would expect from one of the beaten semi-finalists last year. So you'd think they would have the edge on them. Johnny Donnelly himself said that he's thankful that it's not a kind of do and die tie, that Ellistown are at least guaranteed a place in the knockout stages, even if they were to fall to a defeat there. So yeah, it should be a good game. Milltown with the advantage there, and then Rathangan and Straffan. Straffan have been one of these sides who've put up some good showing performances in the last couple of rounds, but the round 2 game against Ellistown, that'll probably end up being the key one for them. That was a big win for Ellistown. As I said, it assures them of a preliminary quarter-final place at the very least as well, and unfortunately for Straffan means that they are out of the championship no matter what happens, so a bit of a free shot for them. And Rathangan, we spoke at length on Rathangan in the last few episodes of the podcast as well. They've been so impressive so far this year. You'd expect them to beat Straffan pretty much at their comfort as well, and move very impressively in towards the quarterfinals. They certainly are one to watch. Obviously, it does matter between these two sides because they have drawn Milltown and Rathangan, so who tops the group could come down to score difference, although Rathangan have a big advantage over Milltown. It would take, I suppose, a narrow win for Rathangan and a huge win for Milltown for that to really come into play. So it's probably unlikely, but maybe just one to keep an eye out on as well, because we've seen before in this last round of the championship, the unexpected can happen. But yeah, you'd imagine wins there, I think, for Rathangan and Milltown.
Complications aplenty then in Group B, Richard, where we have Salins versus Round Towers on Thursday night in Conless Park at 7:45. Game I'm doing myself, and indeed Ballyteague versus Castledermot. That one is at 7:45 in Mangard Park 1. Salins on top, Ballyteague, Round Towers and Castledermot with no points, and that's the scenario there. What will be the outcome?
Definitely one that has permutations and combinations left, right and centre, this one. As you say, Salins and Towers, I'm at that one as well. This tonight, Thursday night, as we record. So looking forward to that one. Looking forward to Salins getting a bit more of a competitive opposition, I would hope, and on their behalf almost, because they've won every game so far by 20 points plus. So Towers need the win as well. They're on 2 points with Ballyteague. But there's plenty at the bottom of the table to be interested in as well. So you've got Castledermot on no points, Towers on 2, Ballyteague on 2, all of whom could still come into the relegation scenario. So Tommy has all the scenarios over there on the right. I think a Salins win and a Ballyteague win is probably the cleanest scenario. So that would put Salins through and Ballyteague into second place and into the quarterfinals as well. And then Towers, I think in that scenario, if I'm getting this right, Tommy, would then go into the preliminary quarterfinal with Castledermot, their season finishing. In terms of predictions, how do we see this? I think there's more in Castledermot than we've seen so far. And I think their game against Ballyteague is going to be intriguing. Maybe on form, you'd say Ballyteague might be slight favourites to win that one, but I think there's a performance in Castledermot yet, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did a number on Ballyteague ultimately in that one. Which I think, if I'm right in saying, Tommy, would bring us into our mini league scenario potentially if Salons have beaten Towers. So that would be mini league scenario 2 on your screen here if anyone's watching in video.
It's definitely see the big impact of that bylaw, because obviously Castledermot were on the wrong end of a big hammering against Salons, and you can see there they have a minus 30 score difference, but it went into that mini league scenario, they're only carrying a minus 8 score difference into that. So that certainly would be a group where that bylaw would have a huge impact if that scenario played out.
I did see, I think did David Keaton go off injured, Tommy, at the weekend, the last game? I don't know if that was anything significant.
He went off early in the first half, which would have had a big impact because Towers did very well in the middle.
Tommy, we stick with you then for Group C, and again the mini league scenario could come into that in 1 or 2 indeed. Kilcullen versus St. Lawrence's on Sunday in Mangard Park at 3:15, and at 3:15 in Clane, 2 Mile House versus Kevin's. Plenty of intrigue in that group as well, Group C, Tommy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously you look at Larry's up the top, and again, this goes back to, I think Ger and Richard have both said at the beginning from the Senior Football Championship, is that you have to show respect to every club and every scenario. So a lot of people would expect St. Lawrence's to beat Kilcullen, and they are heavy odds-on favourites at the moment. But you have to show each permutation and what can happen, because you never know what happens in football. But the cleanest thing, as well, to use Ger's terminology, would be for Larry's to win. It does get very, very hairy for Kilcullen, as you say, if St. Kevin's win. So if St. Kevin's beat 2 Mile House, which is not beyond the realms of possibility, going by St. Kevin's performance the last day against St. Lawrence's, we see that in mini league scenario 2, that Kilcullen's current situation cannot change because they've played 2 Mile House and St. Kevin's, and they're on -7. Now below them are St. Kevin's. This is a live table. This is the current standings. So if this scenario kicks in and St. Kevin's beat 2 Mile House, then St. Kevin's will move to 2 points. But look at their scoring difference. It's already better than Kilcullen's. And theirs will improve anyway, but not that it matters. So they will automatically jump ahead of Kilcullen, putting Kilcullen into the reserve playoff final. So simple as that. So things can get hairy. If St. Kevin's beat 2 Mile House and Kilcullen lose to Larry's for Kilcullen. So that's just one of a few scenarios, but one that I've picked out because it's very, very important. And based on that, on the fact that Kilcullen have beaten St. Kevin's, probably a little bit of a surprise at the time, but their performance they put in that night in beating St. Kevin's, and then for Kevin's to pass them out and them to go into a relegation final, it just goes to show you again that scoring difference, exactly as Ger said about Castledermot the last day. The scoring difference becomes huge in these mini league scenarios. So I would expect Larry's to shake off that performance that they had against St. Kevin's, where they allowed St. Kevin's get back into it. Left her scoring boots at home for a long time, Larry's. I think they should shake that off and beat Kilcullen. But St. Kevin's and 2 Mile House is very difficult to call. If there was a gun to my head, I would probably say that I think 2 Mile House are gathering a little bit of momentum at the moment, at the right time. I did say on the podcast a couple of weeks ago as well, just needed that one good performance. But I think they might have a little too much for St. Kevin's. That's where
Kevin's are due a win, though. You don't think?
Sorry?
I think Kevin's are due a win on performance.
They are indeed.
They're due a win, but they didn't get over the line against St. Lawrence's. They faded away, and they should have. They should have beaten St. Lawrence's. Simple as that. Lorries were there to be taken, and they didn't take them. So whether that was a bit of a kick to them, especially after losing to Kilcullen. So it's easy to say that there's a win in these lads, but you can say that about any team, lads. Come on.
Yeah. Finally, Ger, then.
Tommy.
Group D of the National Electrical Wholesalers Intermediate Football Championship. We have Nurney versus Leixlip on Sunday in Cedarwood St. Conleth's Park at 1:30, and at the same time in Mangard Park, Monasterevin versus Suncroft, a South County derby, you might say. Leixlip on top on 4 points with a plus 24 score difference. Then you have minus 12 score difference with Suncroft at 2 points. Norney minus 3 with 2 points. Monasterevin on the bottom minus 9 with no points. All sorts of scenarios in this one, including possibilities of a mini league scenario 1 or 2, Jar.
Yeah, I think we talked about this league in last week's episode as well. It's a league that changed drastically in the final minutes of that game between Norney and Monasterevin. And Monasterevin were cruising towards a victory with a 5-point lead in the 59th minute of that game before Norney produced heroics to score 1-3 and really put a completely different slant on this going into the last round. And Norney were fantastic in those final couple of minutes and absolutely superb. They gave themselves a real fighting chance, but with all respect to them, as Tommy was saying in the previous group, there's various permutations and scenarios, but it's hard to imagine anything other than a win for Leixlip against Norney. Leixlip are certainly one of the real contenders for this year intermediate championship, and probably don't deserve the loser section as on the fact that they lost against such a good team in Rathangan in the opening preliminary round. Yeah, of course, again, they have been knocking on the door and probably have their hair pulled out up there in Leixlip now over the last couple of years trying to get over the line in the intermediate championship. But yeah, they're obviously, again, with respect to everyone else in this group, they're far too strong for these teams, as has been proven in the opening 2 rounds, and you'd expect to continue that on a Sunday. So that means I think we can focus on that mini league scenario 3, where it's going to be down to Norney, Suncroft, and Monasterevin, and as kind of Tommy has explained in the other groups there, Norney's scoring difference in that scenario was locked in at -3, which certainly gives them a real opportunity. And again, going back to that final couple of minutes against Monasterevin in round 2, that could be what saves their bacon. So a lot on the line there between Monasterevin and Suncroft. That's going to be a huge tie. Monasterevin on the 5 points there, the disadvantage in the scoring difference. So they have to win Monasterevin. They have to win by 3 points then, I think, to overtake that scoring difference in Suncroft. So yeah, that's going to get right down to the wire. That is going to be one now where it's going to be nip and tuck and really, really tight between those two teams. That's, I think if Richard was talking about 51%, this might be even a 50.5% one here, because I maybe slightly fancy Suncroft with Fionn Dowling and just the scoring talents that he has, and just maybe have a slight edge on the Monasterevin side, who have really been struggling this year through the league and into the championship as well. But they could be one as well, maybe, that have just been saving up one big performance. And at Monasterevin, if they have been saving it, this is the time to produce it. But they probably have been kicking themselves for the last 2 weeks for letting that 5-point lead against Norney slip through their fingers. And if there's any sort of carryover from that, then Suncroft will take advantage of it. But that one is going to go down to the absolute last minute, last second of injury time on Sunday. I think it's going to be one of the real nail-biting groups over the weekend.
There you go. That's the intermediate championship.